Okay, so in this first tutorial, we're going to set up the scene. This is an important part of the process because as a team, you will need your assets to be able to load into each other and ensure that they're at the same size, that the timelines are at the same frames per second as well. All that will ensure that when you bring your assets together, it works and there aren't any issues that then have to be re-edited to fix, as well as some other general setting up points. So what we're going to do is set up the scale, the direction, and the frames per second. We're going to set up an autosave feature. We're going to set up a project file directory, and then we'll set up a custom shelf so that we can save the frequently used buttons to save us constantly going back into menus. So the first thing we're going to do is go to File. We're going to go to Set Project. So from this, I want you to go to your student documents or your hard drive or your USB. Ideally something with a lot of space, because when we start having those autosaves, we want to be able to ensure that we don't run out of room. And we're going to create a new folder, and we'll just call this South East Enders. And if you're saving it on the data drive of the machine you're working on, just put your name. So that way, if another student's on there, they can differentiate. So we're going to click Set, and that means everything will go into that area. And then when this menu comes up, click Create Default Workspace. So basically, rather than trying to find it or find another location, this means it'll always be with that project. Okay, there's some reason it's not happened, but don't worry. So what we're going to do is go then to Project Window. And basically what you've got here is our current project, which we've just set. And in here you have all the folders. So you've got things like scenes. So this is where all our save files will go. We've got images where our rendered images will go. We've got sounds and movies where other things that we export will come. Our autosaves will also feature in this folder. A lot of the other folders at this stage of your kind of progression we won't really use or need to look at, but it will just make them either way. So if we just click accept, that's going to load in there. And if I go back to my folder, you'll see we've got the project, and you'll see all those in there. Okay, and there's that workspace Mel, which basically means that's the code for what we've set up. So then we're going to go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and we're going to go down to Preferences. So in here on the left hand side we'll see all the different categories, and all of these can be clicked on to make changes for various different things. And on the right you'll have the settings that you can then adapt to manipulate to tailor to what you want. The first thing we're going to do is go down to the settings option. We're going to make sure our up axis is on Y. We're going to make sure our linear is on centimeters. Okay, and obviously you've got the options for millimeter, meter, so on. We're going to make sure our angular is degrees rather than radians. And we want our time, rather than being 24 frames per second, to be at 30. And the tolerance should be 0.00010, and tangential should be 0.1. We're then going to go down to Files / Projects, and in here we're going to set up our autosave feature. So under the autosave section, we're going to click Enable. We want it to prompt us before we save, so it'll come up with a little message saying, do you want to autosave now? So we're going to click Save. Click that on, sorry. And then we're going to click Limit Autosaves. So we don't want it to go on infinitely. We'll have it go up to 50. I can't see us needing more for that for the type of assets we're using, because if it's going to save every 10 minutes like we have listed here, you know, that's several hours worth of saves, which we shouldn't need whilst working on this. Everything else should be like this default, so we'll just leave that the same, and then we're just going to click Save. Okay, so we've set up the project directory, we've set up the direction, frames per second and scale, and also the auto save feature. So the final part is to now set up our own custom shelf along the top. So on the left hand side of the shelf you'll see an equal sign and a circle with some spikes. Click on the circle with some spikes, and we're going to go down to new shelf. We're going to call this whatever your name is. So in my case, I'm just going to call it Adam, and click OK. Now you'll see on the shelf that's added itself at the end. And what we're going to do is click on the equal symbol, and basically I'm going to move my name all the way to the top so it's over at this side. So sorry, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to go to Windows, and we're going to go down to settings/preferences and go to shelf editor, and you'll see on the left hand side under shelves we have our name, and basically we want to move it up. So if we click on this icon here, which is a planar with an up arrow, and then we just keep clicking that, and you'll see in the top here that it's moving across to the top. If we keep pushing that, it will end up at the other side, and basically that's going to be ready for us to add in some shelf contents later on. So we're just going to click Save All Shelves, and we are now good to go. So the next step we're going to do is to save the scene. So we're going to go to File, Save Scene, and you'll notice we have our project folder. So if you double click on that and go down to Scenes, and in this we're just going to call this Lamppost, and we're going to call this version 01. Okay, and click Save, and we are now good to go. So just to recap, we've done preferences, we've gone through the project file directory, and we've set up a custom shelf. It's important that those units are the same size in everyone's projects, because if you're working in a team and they are different, or the frames per second are different, it's going to cause problems. So now you've got this set, we're ready to start